everyone, welcome to Steph's Sweets cookie tutorial. This one might be a little wobbly until I get the hang of it. Thank you for subscribing to our cookie kit. Everybody in their bag should have icing, cookies, sprinkles, a scribe. What you will also need are paper towels and a pair of scissors. Before we get started, you want to take your icing bags and you want to knead them. What we're doing is putting the color back together because as it sits there, it separates the water, the dye, the sugar. There's no preservatives to hold it together like you might find in a store. So we want to just mix it all and mix that color back together and get the proper thickness. Also, when we cut the bags, we're going to cut them really, really small like I did here. And I'll show you again on this one. You can always make the bag bigger, but you cannot make it smaller. In traditional cookie decorating, we outline first and then flood it with icing. And the point of that is so the icing doesn't go overflowing over the whole cookie. All right. You also have a scribe tool. This tool is to help push around the icing into those little areas that you missed. You want to put as much icing on that cookie as possible. There shouldn't be too many empty spots. You may think you're putting too much icing on, but trust me, you're not. And you don't want to hold it this way because you're just going to push all the icing to one side. So always hold your scribe up and down. Okay? I'm just going to give you a few tips on how to decorate your box. You can decorate it any way you'd like. If you want to go ahead and give these little tricks a try, that would be amazing. And you can post on my Facebook and Instagram page. All right, let's get started. It might be a little wobbly getting to the cookie as I've really never done this before. But bear with me. Hopefully every week it'll just get better. All right, here I have our hat. This is our winter hat. You can take any color you want. I'm gonna go ahead and take my pink, and I'm gonna hold that icing bag about 1/2 inch above the cookie. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to outline that cookie. And I use my other hand to guide the bag. I am actually guiding my hand along. I'll show you. I usually take this hand and I hold kind of the base of my other hand, and that helps me move that icing bag along. So now that I've outlined the cookie, I'm gonna squeeze that bag harder. You don't wanna open it back up because you're gonna wanna use this for other cookies, and you're gonna wanna just squeeze that bag harder. Always hold that bag by the knot or the blue tape. Otherwise, the icing is gonna come out the top. And unfortunately, there really is no way to put it back in, and it really just makes for a huge mess. So always, always, always hold that bag by the top, by the blue tape or the knot, whatever is on your cookie. All right, I take my scribe, and you can see those little empty spaces, and I just push all that icing into place. All right, there aren't really too many empty spaces. You're gonna also clean off your scribe in between every time you use it. Otherwise, it's either gonna mix colors together or it's gonna crust on there, and it's gonna be really, really hard to get off. I'm gonna give it a little shake and a little tap, and that's gonna settle the icing and make it flat. So the funny thing is that the icing will crust on the top, although it takes almost 12 to 24 hours to fully dry. So while our icing is still wet, I'm gonna take my other colors and I'm gonna make a pattern. You can use whatever colors you want. If you just want to use one color, that's fine. But I would use another color other than pink. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to see it. So what I do is I'm going to make some lines across my hat here. I'm going to leave enough space because I'm going to alternate some of the colors. So I'm just going to make 4 lines, 2 of each color. I'm going to take my scribe and I'm going to drag it down in the icing through those horizontal lines. So I'm gonna alternate going down and up, cleaning my tool in between each time. All right, and this is gonna make a really cool pattern. Now, usually I would let my icing dry and then we can do the top pom-pom with another color and put some sprinkles on it. So for right now, we're gonna set this cookie aside and let it crust over. Next, I'm gonna take my mitten, and I want my mitten and my gloves to match. So I'm actually gonna take the same colors and we're gonna repeat the same steps. We're going to outline the cookie, and then we're gonna flood it in, squeezing that bag as hard as you can, always at the knot or the tape. Otherwise it's gonna come out the top and you're just gonna have a real big mess. I believe everybody should have gotten at least one extra bag, just in case that happens. All right, I'm gonna take my scribe, holding it up and down, filling in the spaces, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make the same pattern on my mitten. And I'm gonna do it down below, kind of where the cuff of the mitten is. I'm gonna make a little bit of a smaller version because I want my hat and my mitten to match. So I'm gonna take my scribe tool, I'm gonna go down and up, cleaning it in between each time. And then I'm gonna set that on the side. Next, I'm gonna take out my snowflake, and I'm gonna do my snowflake, let's see, white. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna outline every part of the snowflake, and take your time because there's lots of little crevices and little pointy areas, and you wanna show that beautiful shape of the snowflake. And we're gonna flood it, and then we're gonna put it on the side and let it crust up before we add another fun color on the top. Usually when I'm decorating cookies, I will put it in a dehydrator to dry the top quicker. I'll even leave it for a few hours because I don't want the colors to bleed into each other. And that happens a lot here in the Northeast where it's humid. So I don't really like to do cookies in the summertime because sometimes they just don't work and the colors just bleed together. All right, so we're gonna take our scribe tool. Sometimes I hold it at a little bit of an angle or up and down, but I never ever hold it sideways because you're just gonna smush all that icing to one side and you don't want that. The scribe is really important here with the snowflake because there's lots of little crevices you want to get into. So I take my snowflake and I kind of give it a little tap and a little shake just to settle the icing. And then next I'm going to take my hot cocoa cup and I'm going to make the base blue. I don't want to make it white because we're going to need the white for the top to make the whipped cream. So I'm going to make the handle, and how I'm going to make the handle is I'm gonna follow this curve, but I'm gonna go in the center. So I'm gonna follow the curve, and then I'm gonna close it off with a straight line. And you're gonna leave that inside empty. So now I'm going to outline from the base of the cream right across. And actually what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make that same pattern that I have on my hat and mittens. So I'm gonna have my pink and my white handy next to me. So I'm gonna flood it and I'm gonna go all the way around that handle. And sometimes you'll hear the air releasing out of the bag as we use some of the icing, and that's perfectly normal. Do you see how much icing I use? Don't be afraid. That's what that outline is for, to hold all that icing so it doesn't overflow, right? It's kind of like a dam holding back water. I'm gonna give it a little tap and a little shake. And then what I'm going to do is I'm gonna recreate the same pattern that I have on my mitten. So I'm gonna just make lines across and I'm gonna alternate colors. I like a theme, so I want it all to match. But I wanna see your creativity and I would love for you to post your fun ideas on my page. All right, and then I just do the same thing and I go up and down and I clean that scribe in between after every time I use it. So now I'm gonna go back to my hat. You could do the pom-pom any color you'd like. I think I'm gonna do white, and I'm just gonna outline the remaining section. You don't even need to outline in there, but what I like to do when I flood this part is I like to squeeze the bag, and I kinda like to go around the border first of where the other color is. I don't know, it's a habit. I just always kind of like to start there. And I fill it in, and sometimes you can even use your bag to move that icing around if it's a really small space. I'm gonna take some of those sprinkles and I'm gonna decorate the top of the pom-pom to give it some texture. And there you have your hat. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna go back to my hot cocoa cup. Like we just did with the pom-pom, I am going to outline. I'm gonna show you two ways. You can outline your hot cocoa, and what you can do is you can connect the lines. It's kind of like we're gonna make sections. It's not kind of like, we are gonna make sections. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna alternate flooding and you're gonna let them dry. And then we're gonna go back and we're gonna fill in the rest. And then I'm also gonna apply a few sprinkles on there. Otherwise it's gonna dry and I'll lose the time that I'll be able to apply the sprinkles. Don't worry if they get inside, we're just gonna cover them. So it's not a big deal. So let's put this one on the side and then we'll go back to it. Alternatively, you can just kind of squeeze your bag and you can make it like real whipped cream, and you can just squeeze and go back and forth to make that whipped cream like. I'm gonna go back to my snowflake. Now, normally I would let it dry a little bit longer. If you guys have time, I would let it crust over for maybe 10 minutes or so. But for right now, I'm just gonna show you. I go from point to point and I'm gonna drag my icing bag and we're gonna make lines to start. And there should be 3 lines. So we're gonna go straight from one side to the other, holding that bag about 1/2 inch above your cookie. It's actually easier to drag your icing that way. And then we're gonna make V's. And you see these points here? We're gonna connect them at the line, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna start here and I'm gonna make a V shape. And I'm gonna go around the entire snowflake that way. Now, fun fact, this was one of the first cookies I ever learned to decorate when I was working in New York City as a pastry chef. And ever since, I have just been smitten by them and I make them every single year. And there's your snowflake. If you have sanding sugar, which is like a really fine crystally sprinkles, I like to sprinkle those on the lines, the detail part, but you want to make sure the snowflake underneath is extra dry. Otherwise, snowflakes are just going to stick, the sprinkles are just going to stick to every part of the snowflake. I'm going to go back to my hot cocoa cup and I'm going to fill in the rest. Now, really quickly, my other portions have started kind of drying up, on the outside at least. And so you're going to be able to see the difference. And it's going to look like actual whipped cream, if you can see. You just have to alternate the icing and give it enough time to crust over to give it that awesome look. So here we have our hot cocoa cup, our mitten, our winter hat, and our snowflake. Thank you guys for joining me. If you ever have any questions, you can reach out to me by email. Please post your creations on my Facebook and Instagram page. And I'm really looking forward to our January box. Happy holidays.